have to record. A few people mentioned that they might be late, so if I could record. So I'm recording. Yeah, so hi, my name is Cornelius. This is our first class. It's hopefully one of 30 classes where we'll be going over web development. So primarily we'll be doing full stack web development. And we will go over and talk about what those things mean. So you don't have to worry right now what it means. So it's 30 weeks. We are going to meet twice a week, Tuesdays and Saturdays. I mean, before we leave here today, we'll try and agree on the time for Tuesday. But Saturdays, I mean, around this time, 6:30. I mean, then again, if as a group, if we feel like we want to maybe move the time a little, we'll try and talk about that before we go. So in today's class, these are the things we are primarily going to go over. We're going to talk about software engineering, what it is, the opportunities that there are for you. We're going to learn about how this course is structured. We're going to talk about how to learn. I think that's like one of the most important things, knowing how to learn. Sorry. Knowing how to learn. We're going to code. I mean, most of our time together throughout the 10 weeks is going to be a lot of hands-on stuff where we're actually writing code, where we're actually building stuff. So we're going to code. We're going to talk about what HTML is today. Our main focus will be on the basics of HTML. We're going to talk about what it is, why it is important, all those fun stuff. Yes. So I mean, usually before I go into these classes, I like to start off with questions. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free. Please feel free to ask any questions. Sorry, someone is saying they're unable to. Did I give the opinion that you have to set up VS Code before you join the meeting? Because people are texting me that they're trying to set it up. Okay. Yeah, but if you have any questions about the class, anything, I mean, if you have any questions, this is the time to ask. So for the next 5 minutes, if you have any questions, please go on and ask. It could be about anything, the class, what your expectations are, anything like that. Yes, we'll just give you a few more minutes for anybody who has questions. Okay. I would assume that no one has questions. Am I okay to move on? And maybe give me some reaction in chat so that I know that we are here. Okay. Okay, cool. So for anyone who just joined, this is a 10 weeks. You can call it a boot camp. You can call it. I know. I mean, I guess maybe a boot camp is the good name for it, but over the next 10 weeks, we are going to be learning web development, full stack web development. We're going to be doing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's going to be a lot of hands-on stuff. And I mean, maybe we can move on to the next slide. So the truth is learning to code, you don't need to be super brilliant, but then it requires like dedication, consistency, like everything in life. And I mean, this is called a drop of sorrow. So it's just the point that, sorry, Mr. E has a question. Emmanuel, after the next 10 weeks, are we able to find a job in coding? So the answer, I mean, I can't give you a direct answer, whereas I can say that after the next 10 weeks, you can get a job. But after the next 10 weeks, you should be able to have the skills that could potentially lead to a job. Getting a job in engineering requires so many other things like networking. It requires other things just beyond your skills. But in terms of skills, you should have a good foundation to be able to start applying and things like that. And one of the main things about engineering is a lifelong learning endeavor. So you're going to always have to be learning new stuff. There's always going to be new technologies that you have to learn to adapt to. So in terms of if it gives you the right foundation to be able to start applying for jobs, yes. although there'll still be a lot to learn. So to answer your question, yes, after the next 10 weeks, we'll hopefully have learned enough for you to be confident to look for a job. Yeah. So over the next 10 weeks, I mean, this is called the trough of sorrow. So the trough of sorrow is just the notion that whenever you start something, you're very excited. So you have that excitement that comes from, that tends to motivate you. So you're super excited to learn something and all those things. So like today, I'm sure most of you are excited about the fact that you're going to learn how to code and things like that. But then as time goes on, the excitement starts to wane off when you start to see the magnitude of work that is required to be able to get good at this. And it is what we call the trough of sorrow. It is at a point where like you feel like you're at rock bottom. You feel like you're not improving or you're not learning new stuff or things are not just clicking enough. And in my experience, I find that that is the point where a lot of people give up. Because right now, I mean, you're going to be learning new stuff. It's very exciting. You get to the point where like maybe things are not clicking as fast as you think they should click, or things are not making sense as quickly as you want to. And there's a tendency to feel discouraged. And I'm sure most of us have done like online courses, like you've done like Udemy or you've done something like that. We always start off with a course where we are like excited, but then after a few days, we barely ever open the course. There's a research that like less than 60% or 70% of people who buy Udemy courses complete them. So it's just that thing where like you're very excited at the beginning, but then you start to get into the point where like there's so much hard work that it doesn't feel like you're making progress or things are clicking well enough. And that's the trough of sorrow. And I guess in our time together, my advice is that there'll be times when things are not making sense as quickly as you wanted to, or there'll be times when you're reading stuff and you don't understand, or you're trying to code stuff and it's not making sense. But then those times, it's still, just know that it's still part of the process. It's not going to be a high from now to the rest of your career. You're going to have times when things are not making sense. But then the way is to keep learning, don't give up. Just continue doing what you want to do. And if you continue, you get to this point where it's a promised land where like eventually things will start to click. You'll feel like you've improved and everything. So I guess my one advice, if you forget anything that we talk about in this class, is, I mean, when you find yourself in the trough of sorrow, don't give up. Just know that it's just part of the process. When things are not making sense, don't feel like you need to give up. I mean, the whole thing about coding is you don't have to be exceptionally brilliant. I mean, you just have to be willing to put in the effort. You don't need to have like the highest IQ in the world. Everybody can learn to code. So that is like my one advice. Now, these are the habits I always like to share. So the first thing is to learn to manage your frustrations. I mean, there'll come times when you are frustrated because you're trying to do something and it's not just going the way you want it to go. You're trying to code something, it's not working. The first thing you want to do is learn to manage your frustration. Don't let it get overwhelming for you. I mean, sometimes if things are not working, just like walk away, leave it, come back the next day. Just learn to manage your frustration. The other thing is to learn to be consistent. Like you can't get good at this if you want to do it very sparingly. I mean, you have to learn to like put in little amounts of effort consistently. It's better than trying to put in like a vast amount of effort once. So be consistent. The next thing is to just take care of yourself. I mean, you want to take care of yourself. You'll be typing so much. You want to make sure that you are taking care of your rest. You don't want to fall sick. So just take care of yourself. So those are the three things I always say: manage your frustration, be consistent, and take care of yourself. I mean, don't try to do too much in a little time. Just learn to space things out and take care of yourself. Another thing is, I mean, I find that when you're learning to code, or in my experience, I learned that the reason most people give up is usually you're doing it on your own. And so when things don't make sense, you don't even know who to ask or where to go to. Learning to do anything on your own is very hard. I mean, what we eventually want to do is create a community where you can ask your questions. I mean, you can share your code, people can look at it, things like that. I mean, I'm not a big fan of WhatsApp group, but for now, I think it makes the most sense because Slack or Discord or something is too much for us right now. So maybe we'll just do WhatsApp page where you can share your code if you need people to look at your code. If you're writing something, you feel like it's not working and you need help, where you can share. I mean, the closer you stick in the community, the more likely you're going to be successful on this journey. Like there's a reason why there's a there are a lot of developer communities, because this career, you can't thrive in isolation. Like, you always need help. There's somebody who knows something that you most likely don't know. Or sometimes there have been times where, like, I'm writing code and like something is not working, and I get somebody to like a second eye, and it's just like something simple, and vice versa. When I look over people's code and it's like something simple and we're able to resolve it. So I mean, just don't try too much to stay in isolation. I mean, immerse yourself in the community as much as possible. Get help. No question is too silly to ask. I mean, regardless of what it is, if you feel like it's not making sense, like, drop a question. I'm sure somebody might be able to answer. So I mean, we will, I mean, there'll be more correspondence on how the group will come about. If it's a WhatsApp page, I mean, there'll be more correspondence. So yes, any questions so far? Wait, by the way, do you want to show, can I hear like some feedback so I know I'm not talking to myself? Okay, I guess I'm talking to myself.
No, you're not talking to yourself.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Kwabna. Thank you, Sheila. Okay, so before we start, the first thing I usually like to go over is how to learn. I mean, most of us have been to school. So I mean, the one thing they don't teach you in school is how to learn. And there's a right way to learn. And I mean, I hope this, for the next 10 minutes or so, these strategies help you, because I mean, one of the things you have to be good at for this career is to know how to learn, because you always have so much to learn that you want to be able to consume the materials and still be able to use them. So it's how to learn. Hopefully you're not like this little boy who's trying to like scan through all the materials and hope that they'll remember. So there's a right way to learn, and there's Ebbinghouse's forgetting curve. So it just says that when we learn something, I hope these things, when we learn something, so this is the point when we learn something. So immediately after you learn something, you start to remember. After 20 minutes, you will have forgotten about 42% of what you learned. You only remember 58% of the things you have learned. After 1 hour, you'd have forgotten almost half of what you learned. In 9 hours, you would have gotten more than half of what you learned. By day 6, you'd have almost forgotten everything that you learned. And it's just the way it is. When you learn something, you forget. It's just like the natural way things work. When you learn something, I mean, you remember some parts of the information, but then there's like decay in memory where you start to forget. But then there's a way you can use this forgetting curve to your benefit, where you can consistently reset the forgetting curve. That's why we like to talk about spaced repetition and active recall. So these are links. Ali Abdal has great videos on these things, and I mean, I'll share them. I reckon that everybody watches them after class. So spaced repetition just means giving yourself time between when you study the material and when you go over it, just so that you're consistently resetting the forgetting curve. So there was this research where they had like people study the material back to back to back to back to back. And they had people study the material, leave it for a few days, come back, review it, and things like that. And they found out that the people who spaced it out did far better in tests compared to the people who were trying to like study all the materials consistently. And Ali talks about it more in his video. So the one thing I recommend is spaced repetition. Just, I mean, when you learn, it's likely that you're going to forget, but when you space it out, then it gives you the a better chance of being able to recollect everything that you learn. I mean, sometimes you don't have to recollect everything, but for the important stuff. Yes. I'll share it after class. Yeah, I mean, I don't think when I end the meeting, chat isn't safe, so I just share the links in the email after class. So spaced repetition and active recall. So I reckon everybody watches the video. It's the best way you're going to be able to learn stuff consistently and be able to recall consistently. And I reckon, I mean, what I use is I use Anki. So Anki has an algorithm behind it where when you create your cards, after you have answered the question, it spaces it out for you. So based on how easy, hard, or difficult it was, it spaces it out for you so that the next time, just at the points when your memory is starting to decay, it brings up those cards again, just so you can review. So I reckon for our entire process and even beyond, I reckon everybody uses Anki. a very small application. You can download it onto your laptop. And I reckon everybody makes cards themselves. Don't just go and take somebody's card. I mean, when you're learning something, if you learn something new, make a card for it and just put in Anki. You can put it, I mean, I'll try and show my Anki cards before we leave. Just make Anki cards for the things you're learning. So when you, after today, when you've learned new things about HTML, make a card for HTML, then put all the things you're learning. So if you learn something, make a card for it. Then after a few days, Anki will remind you to go over your cards, things like that. So this is a learning how to learn bootcamp. I know we came here to learn how to code, but then this is the way we are going to be able to thrive during our time together. Any questions? Oh, also one last thing. I reckon that everybody watches Barbara Oakley's Learning How to Learn course. It goes over all these things like Pomodoro, active recall, spaced repetition. I mean, you can breeze through it in 1 week. You don't have to do the essays. You don't have to pay for anything. It's on Coursera. Just like breeze through it. Don't do any of the assignments. Just watch the videos, stuff like that. You can breeze through it in a week. I watched it in a week, so I know it's possible to do it in a week. So I reckon everybody watches Barbara Oakley's course on Coursera, Learning How to Learn. Then I reckon that we use Anki. Okay, so I'll pause here for questions before we get into the main stuff. Anybody has questions? Okay, just so I know I'm not talking to myself. I like feedback. Okay. Okay, great. So because we are practicing these things, Barbara Oakley's courses on Coursera, I'll share the link to everything in the email after class. Because we are going to be practicing these things at the top of every hour, we take a 5 minutes break. Yes, just so, I mean, we're trying to be healthy. We're trying to be healthy. We're trying to practice the things we learn. So at the top of every hour, we take a break. Most likely our course, our time together is going to be between 2 hours, 1 hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours, depending on how much we have to go through. So yes, no questions at this point. Okay, I guess I can move on to the next slide. Okay, so let's talk about the internet. Now I want to hear what is the internet? I mean, what is the internet? Anybody wants to share what they know about the internet? I mean, for this one, I want to hear some answers. So it doesn't have to be right. It just has to be your knowledge of what the internet is. So what is the internet? Oh, nobody. I mean, I want to hear some answers. Okay. Okay, McAfee says the internet is a wireless connection that links devices. This Quivi, Dago, is that you? I hope that's you. Sorry if I butchered your name. But he says an location stored with information, an unknown location stored with information. Okay, hi Dago. Okay, interesting. Anybody else? A network of computers across the world. Okay, so I guess we all have a knowledge of what the internet is. Now, most of us access the internet. Most of us access the internet every day. Most of us use the internet every day. Most of us open our browsers. We log onto the internet. We search for stuff. Most of us haven't really, sorry, I'm trying to open up. Most of us haven't really looked at what goes on in the background or what is happening when we make requests. Can you guys still see my screen? I'm trying to open up. What can you guys see? Can you guys see my screen or you see my Notion?
Well, we see just the internet client server.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to open up my notes. Yeah, so I mean, the internet is just an interconnection of computers. So in simple terms, it's just a lot of computers connected to a server. Now, usually when you go to a browser or when you open your browser tab and you type maybe www.twitter.com, what actually happens is that when you do that, a request is sent to a server. Now, when a request is sent to the server, it returns information, and that information usually has whatever you entered into your browser. So there's a client. The client is the browser that you are sending or you are using. Then when you send a request is made. Now, a request is made. I mean, as we go on, we talk about HTTP request and all those fun stuff. But I mean, right now, you don't have to worry your head over all those things. So just know that whenever you essentially, when you type in something into a browser, you're making a request. Now, that request is sent to a server. I mean, when we say cloud, it's just people's computers that are interconnected. So cloud is not really the sky. It's just people's computers that are connected. So a request is made to the server. Now that server generates a response. Now, most times the way we make that response is through our browsers. We use our browsers. There are different types of development. You have web development, you have mobile development, you have cloud computing, you have all those things. So what we'll be focusing on, Ryan, what we'll be focusing on in our time together is web development. Now, web development is what goes on in your browser. Is request, when you send request and the responses you are getting primarily in your browser. So that is what we'll be focusing on. So mainly web applications, websites, things around those lines are web development. Now, under web development, there are different categories. So you have like front end. Front end is what you see. So front end is when I log on to the website, when I open, for example, Twitter, the things I see, all those things classify as front end. Now, when I like a tweet, I don't know what goes on. All I know is that a number increases, or if it was 1,001 likes, it becomes 1,002 likes. But then I don't know what Twitter's architecture is, but then what generally happens is that when you click on a like button, what is happening is that a request is being sent to the server. Now that server has an information on how many likes that particular post has. So when you send that request, what is happening is that you are telling that whatever database has that information, that you see this thing that has 202 likes, add one to it. So then it updates and it adds one to it. Then it sends the request back to the client. And now you see that the like count has increased by 1. It happens so fast that you don't even know. Most of these things are speed of light, but then that's how requests are being transmitted back and forth. So we'll be focusing on what goes on in the browsers. Most of our work together will be working in the browser. So any questions? I mean, if you have any questions, please drop them in chat. Drop them in chat and I'll go over them. Or if you don't understand anything. Yes. So in our time together, like I mentioned, we'll be doing web development. We'll be looking at HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Now, just for a general overview, HTML is the content. So the content you see when you go and you see text, you see headings, whatever, you see pictures, that is the content. So HTML just focuses on the content. Now, the styling you see, if you see something has a background of blue, if you see something has a background of red, if you see that a text is a different color, if you see that a text is italicized, that's a CSS. So CSS is just for our styling. And JavaScript is for our behavior. So when you click on something and it wiggles, like these days when you like something on Twitter, it pops up like red, then it goes back. So all those things are JavaScript. So the interactions. So just keep this in mind. When we talk about HTML, we're just talking about our content. So the text, the things we can see, the images, those things. CSS will be for our styling. So if we're trying to position something on the left, trying to position something on the right, we're trying to make something italicized, we're trying to change the color of something, we'll use CSS for that. And JavaScript is just for behavior interaction. So when you click on something, what should it do? Should it move around? Should it go up and down? All those things we'll use JavaScript for. Okay. So I guess we can talk about HTML now. Okay, we're not at the top of the hour. So I guess we can talk about HTML now. So for the rest of our time today, and also just before I go on, I know some people messaged me about VS Code. Can I see by hands how many people were able to install VS Code? I mean, if you weren't able to do it, it's not required for today, but I just want to know how many people were able to install it ahead of class, or how many people already have it. So if you have, you can join me in chat or just lift your hands. If not, okay, Makafu, were you able to install it? Oh, okay. Oh, okay, okay. Are you on a Mac? Okay, cool. Okay, Kenneth has it. Dago has it. Sheila, do you have it? Kobna, do you have it?
No, I don't.
Okay, Kobna, do you have it?
No, I don't.
Okay, so maybe we'll take 5 minutes to help anybody who needs to install it. So we'll just take 5 minutes to just help everybody get it set up. I mean, yeah. So Makafu, I think if you go to Finder and you go to downloads, you should be able to, or if you use Safari, there's a download button on the top right. You should be able to click and see it. Let us know if you were able to. Kwame, I know you mentioned that you were trying to download it. Were you able to install it?
No, I wasn't able to. So it was interacting my internet speed for the meeting. So I just stopped it.
Okay, no problem. So I mean, we can all install it later. Okay, so no problem. I mean, if you weren't able to install it, you can install it after class. If you need any help, you can reach out to anybody to just help you set it up. Okay, so let's talk about HTML. So like we were saying, HTML is primarily the content. So the things we see on the page. So when you go to a website, the text you see, all those things are made with HTML. So HTML is, who knows what HTML stands for? I mean, just to see, who knows what HTML stands for?
Hypertext markup language.
Markup language.
Yes, hypertext markup language. So all that it means is it's a markup language. So a markup language is just a language that we used to write text. We used to mark up things. So markup is just writing. So it's the language we used to write stuff. I mean, there's usually the fight in tech communities that it's HTML a language, it's HTML is a programming language, HTML is not a programming language, but we are not here for net fights. We're just here to use it. So HTML for our purposes is a markup language, whether it's a programming language or it is not, that is not our point of concern. All we know is that we want to learn how to use it. So what HTML allows us to do is it helps us define the structure of our content. So we'll go over some elements. So like we're saying, so all your text, everything is going to be HTML. Now in HTML, you have different things in HTML. The main thing you need to be concerned about is elements. So HTML consists of elements. Now what elements are is they define how your content appears. So even though when you go on a website, you can see that all the texts are not the same way. Some are bold, some are smaller, some are on the side. That is because they are with different elements. So your elements will define how your content appears on the page. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so HTML will define your structure, and the main thing you have to be concerned in HTML are the elements. So elements will define how your content are appearing. We'll go over a few elements. So this is a paragraph. I mean, in HTML, the P stands for a paragraph. So for all elements have an opening tag. So an opening tag is an angle bracket with the element inside, then a closing tag. So you have the opening tag, which is an angle bracket, or how do we call it in math? I don't remember. The one we do with right hand, left hand. Yeah, but you have
Greater than and less than
yes,
sign.
you have the greater than and the less than sign, which makes the opening tag. Then you have the less than, you have a slash, then you have the whatever you're using, then you have the greater than sign. That makes the tag. So when you put the opening, the closing tag together, you call that an element. So an element is essentially just a combination of an opening tag, a closing tag, and the content. So this example that I put on the page is a paragraph. It says my cat is grumpy. So because it's a paragraph, we use the P tags to represent a paragraph. So and I mean, we'll write code, so we'll see how it's appearing in the browser. So in our browser, if we were to open this, we'll see that it is a paragraph. Now there are a few more elements. I mean, we'll go over them, but yeah. So you have heading elements. So heading elements, you have H1 to H6. So usually your H1 is the most important thing on the page. So the one thing you don't want to do is you don't want to use the size. You don't want to use these elements based on size. So for example, if you wanted something to be big, you use H1. Usually there's what we call semantic HTML. All that it means is that what you write on the page should be meaningful. There should be like logical coherence. So for example, you use H1 to represent the most important thing on the page. And for example, if you're writing an essay about yourself, the most important thing on the page, heading on the page, will be what you're writing about. So in that sense, that would be your H1. If you have any other headings in that essay, you use these tags in accordance of what you want to use it. So this is just like the order it goes. So H is your heading element. So again, you have the opening tag, you have the closing tag. So you have the H1 less than, greater than, you have whatever the heading is, then you close it. So these are the orders. We have only H1 up to H6. And this is in order of importance. So your most important heading will be H1. Your less important heading will be H6. Okay. We have other tags too. I mean, we've seen paragraphs, we've seen headings, we've seen spans. So spans are things that are not necessarily paragraphs. So if it's not a paragraph, but then it's like a short text, you use a span. I hope you guys are seeing like the way it is written. So you have the opening tag, the span, again, the closing tag. So the only difference between the opening tag and the closing tag is that you have the backslash coming before it. So it's always the same. The only thing is that you have a backslash. I don't know whether it's a forward slash or a backslash, but you have a slash coming before it. So, I mean, you use heading for your headings, use paragraph for your paragraphs. And I'm sure based on English, we all have in our minds examples of what paragraphs are. Then you use spans for short text. So, I mean, if it's not a paragraph, it's just like something short, a brief text. You want to put something on your page, you use a span. The spree, you really have to run into that, but it preserves white space. So if you're trying to leave a white space, you're trying to let the place be blank, you use a pre. There's also ordered list. So again, it's the same sequence, OL, but you have the slash. So ordered lists are things that are ordered. So if you're writing a list or you're coding out a list and you want them to be ordered, so they follow like a sequential order. So from 1, you go to 2, you go to 3, you go to 4, you use the ordered list. So by default, it will number them. I mean, later on, we'll learn how to change them. But if you have things that are not necessarily ordered, so I mean, for example, if, can somebody give me an example of a process which is unordered? I mean, whichever order you do it is not important. Can you give me one example of something that you would use an ordered list for and something that you would use an unordered list for? Or anybody can go. There's no right or wrong answer. I mean, there is, but nobody cares. Oh, don't think hard. I mean, just throw it in chat. We'll all look at it. Can anybody give an example of what? So just think about it. What things are ordered? For example, is a recipe ordered? Okay, list of groceries. So what would that be? Would that be ordered or unordered? Unordered. So yeah, if you're trying to write out a list of groceries, I mean, you don't need them to follow a particular order. So you use a UL tag or a UL element because you don't need them to be ordered. And what would be an example of an ordered list? Okay, list of team players. Okay, I guess maybe if you want to order them from like the goalkeeper to the striker, I mean, you go in sequential order. So if you want things that are not ordered, use an OL. If you want things that are ordered, use an OL. Then an LI is just the list of things inside. I mean, when we code it out, we'll all see it. Then if you want things that are unordered, you use a UL. Does that make sense? If it makes sense, you please throw a thumbs up so that I know that we're progressing. Okay, thank you. Great. So, I mean, we've looked at some elements. We've looked at heading elements. We've looked at paragraphs. We said paragraphs are for paragraphs. Each elements are for headings. We said spans are for short text, which are not necessarily paragraphs. They are smaller than paragraphs. We said OL are for unordered list. OLs are for ordered list. ULs are for unordered list. I mean, and the last thing we'll look at before we take a break, then when we get back, we start coding. Usually when you look on a website, they are broken into sections. So for example, if you were trying to group something, there are ways you group them. And when you are coding or when you are writing the structure for your HTML, there are ways you group your content so that it semantically makes sense. So the first one is a div. So a div is essentially division. So if you have a paragraph and a heading and other paragraphs and all of them, they make sense together or they are together, you use a div. I mean, we'll come back to why you shouldn't always use a div, and we'll distinguish between a div and a section. But a div is essentially a division. So if you want to group items together, for example, if you're writing about Liverpool and you're writing about Man United, the content about Liverpool are all together in one place. So you put them in a div. You put the one about Liverpool in one div. You put the one about Man United in a different div. Now, I hope that makes sense. Now, the next thing is a section. So a section is essential. The next thing is main. Main is essentially the main part of your page. So you would use a main element to contain the main part of your website or your web application. So for example, if you go to a website, I mean, we look at websites and we try to identify what types of elements it is. But if you go onto a website, the first part you see, usually they call it the hero section, where it has the main things, maybe the company does and things like that. You would use a main to wrap that. So that is like the main part of your website, or that's the main part of your web application. Now, a section is almost the same as a div. So the thing that happens is they have a group of people who constantly updates for coding and everything. There's documentations for everything. So when people come up with these things, they write what it is supposed to do, how you should use it and things like that. So before we had a section, we had a div. And so we would use divs for everything. So if you look at a lot of old code, you see that there's divs everywhere. But then they updated the specification. They brought out new documentation where now we use section for things that make sense together. So if things make sense together, you would use a section. Now these days you use a div if, even though they make sense together, but maybe they are not so coherent, but you just need to group them together for some reason. For example, if you're writing about like football and golf, even though they don't make sense together, you're trying to group them in one place, you use a div and use a section for things that make sense together. So it's a section about what? So usually it's confusing and people use divs and sections and everything. But then to write semantic codes, we try to use the right elements for the right thing. So we use a section for things that are together or make sense together. And we use divs for things that may or may not make sense together, but we're trying to group them together primarily for styling purpose, because maybe we try to style them in the same way, or we're trying to make them in the same way. And an article is essentially like an article. An article is mainly a part of a page where you can share and it makes sense on its own. So if I saw that part of my page without reference to any part of the page, it makes sense. So you think of a news article. Like, so you see just the news article. You don't see all the other headlines. I mean, when people share, they just share one part of the website or something. So you use an article for that. I hope it makes sense. But I guess as we code, it will make sense. Now the next one
can you reiterate the article part?
So an article is content that makes sense on its own, exclusive from every other thing. So for example, if I had a whole page And like I have maybe a lot of news. For example, today Liverpool is playing Newcastle. Today Christian Achu's body was found. Today Nanado did something. So all these things are different things. So in a section, I wrap each individual news in an article because I can share them exclusively. And if I saw that alone, it made sense on its own. So when I take it out of the main thing and I just see that, it still makes sense because it's complete. Does that make sense?
Maybe when I see it in action.
Okay, that's fair. So you would use an article for that. I mean, aside is just usually when you go on pages and they have like ads in the corners and things like that, most likely they are using an aside. So you mostly use an aside for like ancillary content, things that are not like important on the page. So like advertisements, things like that. You see a lot of Google ads on pages now, and usually it's an aside. So it's really ancillary content. It doesn't really make sense. It's not really part of the website, or it's not part of what they are trying to, the message they are trying to put across. It's just something extra. So you would use an aside. Now header is just like it is. So the top parts. So usually the first things you see on the website is like a navigation, like with the links and things like that. So you put that at the header, and the footer is the things you see at the bottom. So maybe the links and things like that. So these are the containing elements. So just to recap, so you use paragraphs, headings, things like that to wrap the content. And then you wrap all those contents based on like, if they make sense to each other, based on where they are positioned with these containing elements. So most of the times your paragraphs, your spans will be within one of these containing elements. So your paragraph will be within a main, your images will be within a main, and things like that. Hopefully, as we code along, it will make sense. Any questions? Okay, so we're going to try to build out a simple Firefox site. Let me try and find. We're going to try and build out a simple Firefox site, and then we'll talk through it. So how do I share? New share. Okay, I'm trying to share so that we can all look at it and talk about it before we start coding it out. Okay, so I hope you all can see my whiteboard. Then let me share then let me share the image too. So as we talk about it, we'll try and scribble it down, what we think this thing is, then we'll try and code it out. I'm not sure how to share the image on. Okay. Okay, so let me know if you can see the image.
Yeah, I can see it. Mozilla is cool.
Yes.
I can see it too.
Okay, so this will be our first website. This is going to be the first thing we're going to build out together. So I mean, let's try and talk through the things we see, what we think it is, even before we try and start writing code. So it's what you call a pseudocode. So usually before you start writing code, you want to talk through the things you see. So, I mean, the first thing we see here is Mozilla is cool. What element do we think this could be? Like Mozilla is cool. What element do we think that could be?
That's the header.
Okay, that's the header. Okay, what else? Anybody has any other answer? Okay, so that could be the header. And more specifically, what is it on the page? What is it representing? More specifically, what is it representing? I mean, if I saw it, I would say, Yes, Kenneth is saying the title, because I would assume that everything that comes under it is just talking about how Mozilla is cool. So that's the title. In HTML terms, what would we say it is? It is the heading. So which element will we use for it?
C1.
Okay, can you repeat that?
C1.
Okay, I guess you meant H1. So we'll use an H1 element for it. Yes. So that's the heading. So the first thing is we'll use an H1 element for it. Okay, look at you guys killing it. Now, this is just an image. I mean, images are just images. We'll show how to import images. The next thing, what will we say this is? At Mozilla, we are a global company of, what would that be? And don't be shy, just feel free to say. Okay, Kenneth is saying a paragraph. We agree. Does anybody have anything? At Mozilla, we are a company, we're a global company of. Description. So, I mean, in HTML terms, what would we call that? Like Kenneth said, it's a paragraph. So at Mozilla, this is a paragraph. We would say that is a paragraph. Okay, let me just note it down for anybody who is taking notes. So we all agreed that this was an H1. H1. And this is just how it is. So when you go inside, you'll be able to start recognizing that, oh, this is an H1. Oh, this is a paragraph. This is an unordered list. This is an image. Of course, I'm sure everybody knows what an image is. Now, this next part, technologists, thinkers, builders, what would we say that is? Okay. Yes, there, let's go. So that is an unordered list. So that would be a UL. Look at that score. So these these ones. These ones will be an unordered list. What would we say these ones are? Working together to keep the internet alive and accessible. So people, all those ones, what would we say it is? Okay, Sheila is saying main. What do we think? Okay, Ken is saying it's a paragraph. Yes, so the reason why it is not a main is we're saying main, like main divisions, asides, articles, they are containing elements. So they usually contain everything. So for example, you could say this whole thing from Mozilla is cool. This whole part is the main. Somebody could say it's a section. Somebody could say it's the main because it's the main thing. So everything in this box, you would wrap it in a main or you wrap it in a containing element. Then the individual things could be a paragraph, it could be a span, it could be anything. So like Kenneth is saying, so working together, these things could be, it's a paragraph. Now, we haven't spoken about this, but let's see if anybody will get it. In the last paragraph, you can see, read the Mozilla manifesto. We can see that that one has a different text and it is underlined. What do we think it is? Hyperlink.
That's an article.
That's a link. Okay. Like everybody is saying, it's seen as a link. So I'm sure we've all gone on website where we see these things where you can click on it. Now, if you see the email I sent you, I put a hyperlink. I was hoping that when we get here, it will make sense. But then it's a link where when you click on it, it takes you somewhere else. Now, thankfully, there's a way that we can do that in HTML. And we use an anchor tag. So we wrap, I guess it's better if I type it. So the way you do that is we wrap. Again, as always, this is how the first thing you want to do is you want to do your closing and your opening tag just so you don't forget. Then you put whatever you want to put, Mozilla. So all what this is saying is that this one is a link to a different place. And unfortunately, it's an image, so we can't hover over it. But when we hover over it, it says read the Mozilla manifesto. So it means it's taking us to another page. And that's the way you add links to your page by using an anchor tag. So again, the closing tag, the opening tag and the closing tag. Now for anchor tags, there's an extra thing that you have to add. It's called an href. And what an href simply is where you want, when I click on this thing, where you want me to go. So for example, if you saw the email I sent to you, I had a link. So when you click on the hyperlink, it takes you somewhere. So it was Zoom. So in that instance, what was here was zoom.com and whatever was supposed to be there. So the only difference with all this is that with an anchor tag, you just have to tell the browser that if the user clicks on this, take them here. If they click on this, take them here, class. So that's the only thing. But aside that, it's just a regular element with an opening tag and a closing tag. The only difference is that you add an href and where it is taking us to. Any questions? We're almost at the top of the hour. So any questions, then we'll take a break. And when we come back, we'll try and build this thing out ourselves. So any questions?
I think for the anchor, I've noticed that you didn't close the what's that thing called? The closing tag. You didn't add the slash.
Oh, sorry. I guess, is it out of focus? Let me drag it. Can you see?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. I
Okay.
guess it was out of focus. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm actually lost as to how we got the href.
Okay. So the href is just, I don't know what it stands for. I mean, I've never looked it up, but then it's just a reference for where you want. When I click on this, it should take me to. So for example, if I wanted you to click on a link that takes me to Google, I would put Google here, then I'll put the link to Google here. So I'll do, my href will be google.com, which just means that when you click on this text, it should take you to google.com. So the href is essentially where you want the link to take you when you click on it. That's all it stands for. So if you click on a link, where should they take you to? You actually have to specify that if my user clicks on this link, it should take me here or it should take me here. And the way you do that is by using an href.
Okay.
I mean, if you don't understand, you can ask any more questions. Okay, so we are at the top of the hour, I guess. So we'll take a 5 minutes break. Let me stop sharing my screen. Let me set the timer. We'll take a 5 minutes break. When we come back, we'll get our hands dirty and start writing some code. So let me just set the timer.
I'm guessing we should have set up the VS Code by then.
No pressure. I mean, we'll code together. You don't have to be coding along. So we'll code everything together. But then after
Oh.
class, yeah, if you still need help setting things up, I'm happy to help. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll start the timer. I'll see you all in 5 minutes.
Daniel, reason that's in Google Photograph. But you can, okay, actually, I can make up the Google Photograph and stuff. Uh, It's
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Are we all still here? I mean, give me a thumbs up if you're here and you're excited to write some code. Thank you, Kenneth. Waiting for the rest. Thank you, Dago.
Hello, have we started?
Yes, we're just about starting. Okay, great. I guess we're all here. So let's try some code. So I will be using VS Code. I mean, there are a lot of other IDEs. So IDEs are essentially, when you hear IDEs, it's just like an environment for writing code. There are a lot of other IDEs, like there are so many. But I mean, I recommend VS Code because VS Code is quite easy to set up. And I mean, you don't need to have a lot of prior knowledge to be able to set up. I mean, you just install it and you're good to go. So, I mean, I recommend that we use VS Code for our time together. I mean, afterwards, if you want to be fancy and you want to use something else, yeah, but VS Code is also the most used. So I don't think you would have any reason to use anything else. So the first thing you usually have to do is, and I mean, hopefully, just to make it easy, and I don't know how you structure things, but I mean, you can create a folder for every class. And after every class, I mean, we would have things that we would work on. We'll have like what you want to call assignments, and they always due like a week later. So the one for today is due next week, Saturday. I mean, the main purpose of assignments is I'm not looking to mark, I'm not looking to grade, I'm not giving a certificate. I mean, but then it's for your own benefit if you actually take time to do it. I mean, when you submit, I might look through and stuff like that when I have the privilege of time. But I mean, the main purpose of assignments is I'm hopefully giving you things that will help you acquire the skills that we have spoken about, just so that it's not just talk, but then it's actually you doing. And then the people always ask, like, how can they get better at coding? And I don't think there's a magic trick. The only way to get better at coding is to write a lot of code, like write a lot of bad code in the beginning, because you really don't know what you are doing. But the only way you get good at this is to continue to write code. You don't get good at this by reading books or watching YouTube videos or doing, you only get better at coding by writing code. So that's why I would give out assignments, and they always do like a week later so that you have enough time to work on it. So for this one, I'm just going to name it mozilla.html. Now, the only thing you always have to know is that you have to name your file extensions for HTML has to be .html, the same way your Word documents are .docx, your PDFs are .pdf. It's just the file extension allows your ID or whatever to know that the code you're writing is HTML, because there are so many other things that you could write. So the first thing you just have to notice that your file extension has to be .html. Now, the first thing you need to know is whenever you're writing an HTML code, you always start with this. You do a doc type. Please, if you can't see or anything, just let me know. But the first thing you always do is you do a doc type, exclamation point, doc type, HTML. All what you are trying to do is you're trying to tell your browser that
Hello.
yeah, hi.
Yeah, please, can you make it bold a bit? I can hardly see.
Oh, sorry. Let me.
Also, are we just observing, or we should do it side by side? We should be.
I think it's better today if you just look at this first one. I mean, there'll be ones that subsequently we can do together. But for now, because it's our first run, let's just look at it and go.
Okay.
One sec, let me. Is it big enough?
Yes, please, it's big enough.
Okay. So just to, again, every time, the first thing you want to do is declare a doc type. So what you're telling your browser to do is that what you're telling your browser is that the code you're going to be writing is HTML. So document type HTML. So for every HTML project you start, that is going to be the first line of code you write. It's just essentially telling your browser that, hello browser, I'm writing code. My code is going to be this. Does that make sense? I mean, these ones, it's just something that you probably have to memorize because you'd use them all the time. So yeah, I mean, there's a shortcut, but then because you're starting now, you just don't want to use the shortcut when you don't even know like the content that is there. I mean, subsequently, there's just a shortcut that you use and it just fills out everything for you so that you can actually start writing. Now, after you've written, the next thing you want to do is you want to declare a head. Now, what the head is essentially doing these ones you don't see in your browser, but the head is essentially, okay, the head is essentially the information you are given to the browser, like the title of your page, what version of HTML you are using, what type of language you are using, and stuff like that. So after document, you declare a head. Now in the head, the first thing you want to do is you want to do a language property. Please, does it make sense so far? Hey, please, are we lost?
I'm actually lost, but I'm following.
Please, where are you lost? I mean, we can go over. What are you lost over?
So I don't really understand if the doc type and the HTML is just standard or is something we have to come up with by ourselves. And then I see that we've written the head twice. So I'm wondering if we are trying to write the heading first.
Okay, let me go over. So the doc type is standard for every, so all the things we are coming to write in the next few minutes, they are the standard thing for every project you do. You would have that at the top. So that is just the things you are communicating to your browser. So you are telling the browser what language you're writing in. You are telling the browser, it's information you are giving to the browser. So these things are standard for every HTML project you do. You'd almost always have these things at the top all the time. So it's not things that you have, I mean, it's things that you just have to know because you would use them for everything you do. Does that make sense? So yes, so essentially all the first line is saying is that my document type is HTML. So it's just going to tell your browser that this document, the type of this document is HTML. There are different versions of HTML. The current version that we all use is HTML5 because it's the most up-to-date. And that's what most browsers are updated to use. So essentially the first line is saying that you are writing your code in HTML. Then the next thing you want to do, please, does that make sense, Makafu?
Yes, please.
Okay. The next thing you actually want to do is you want to, now you're asking why I had written, so for everything, for most things, you have to do an opening and a closing tag. That's why, so this is the opening, this is the closing. So opening and closing tag, it just encapsulates like everything. So you can't just have this. I mean, it means I'm not putting it in anything. So most times for most things, there's an opening tag. So this is the opening tag, this is the closing tag. That's why I had written it twice. So like you can see, I have emit. So it's telling me that HTML element represents the root. So these things, the things I'm just going to type, I mean, we can go over, but they are standard. You have them in everything. So the head is the things that usually goes into the browser. And maybe when I type this and I put in my browser, it will make sense. So you do the title Mozilla code. So let me just save this. So these ones are just standard for now. There's a lot more that usually goes in the template, but this is the ones you have to worry about. So first of all, line 1, declare what you're writing, what your document is in. So your document is in HTML. Then in your HTML, you have the head. So the head, everything in the head is things that you don't see on your page. So for example, if I went into my browser, and let me share my browser. Sorry, I'm trying to. Okay. So you see, if I come to my browser right now, you don't see anything. You don't see anything, but if I'm able to hide this, sorry, how am I able to? But if you look, can you see in the tab where my mouse is?
Yes.
Can you see Mozilla code is written in the tab?
Yes, please.
So essentially, go on, please.
So this is the translation of the code we put at the back.
Yes. So what happens is that when I push it into the browser, it breaks it down. So it has to understand. So it understands that the head is the thing, is the name of the website or everything. That's why it has put it in the tab. But you see on the main page, there's nothing. So the information in the head is just for the browser. So usually you put the title of the page you want to see in the browser. So for example, when I go to, this is the Pomodoro, you see, it says time to focus. So that is what is in the head. If I put your name in the head, when I open the browser, that is what will show in the tab. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Is anybody confused?
Yes, please.
Okay, so these ones are just templates. You use them every time. So the head is for the browser, the head, it doesn't show up on your page. Now, after you have done the head, the next thing you want to do, and the thing is, everything you write should be between the HTML tags, because everything you write after you've declared that doc type is HTML. So the head is in. Now, for things to actually show in the browser, you use a body. Now, a body tag is what shows up in the browser. So for example, if I type, hello, everybody, and I save it. Oh, sorry, you guys couldn't see my ID when I was typing, or you could see?
We couldn't. And I don't know how you embedded the code into the browser.
Oh, it's okay. I guess I should just share my entire screen. I'm coming. I was trying to switch between screens. Okay. Can you see my browser now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and can you see when I open VS Code? Can you see?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So
Yes.
oh, sorry, I didn't know that you couldn't see. Sorry. So let me just cut this. So for now, the way you can usually do, and one thing I just want you guys to know, you can see that there's a white thing here. Whenever you see that, it means that you've not saved. Sometimes you make changes and you think it's not working, but it usually means you've not saved. When I save it, you see that it just changes to X. So that's all. Now, the easiest way you can do it is if you want to take your code into your browser. I mean, the extensions you can download, but don't stress yourself. All you can do is take it like this and drag it. Can you see me dragging it?
Yes.
Yes. So just drag it and take it into your browser like this and just paste it. Then the code is in your browser now. So for now, that's what you can do. Just drag and drop it in your browser. That's how you show your code in the browser. The extensions that, I mean, I have extensions that I use, for example, open in other browsers and stuff like that. But don't worry too much about extensions right now, just so that's not too much. So right now, the only things you have to worry about is before you can start writing your code, you have to declare what your document type is going to be in, which is line 1. Then you do an HTML element, then everything comes in the HTML elements. The first thing you want to do is a head. So the head is the browser name, what your tab is going to be called. So I named the Mozilla code, it's called Mozilla code. If I change it to class, if I change it to class and I save, if I refresh my page, you can see that it has changed to class. Can you all see?
Yes, please.
Yes. Please, if anybody doesn't understand anything, let me know. I don't have chat open. Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, so that's all you do. So these things are from line 1 to 6. You can always copy and paste. I mean, I can even put it in chat. It's not something that you have to memorize or anything. You would always use the same thing. I mean, there'll be more things that will add as we progress, but it's not something that you have to worry your head about. It's just templates. So you have to use the same thing all the time. And hopefully you understand what they are doing. So the doc type is telling you that you're writing in HTML. The HTML is just every code you're going to write is in HTML. So you put them in an HTML tag. The head is what shows up in the browser. So it shows up as information primarily for the browser. So it won't show up on your website itself. It's just for your browser to know that this is my title. Sometimes people write in different languages. So you can add like a language if your language is just to let the browser know that my code is in another language and things like that. So that is information mainly for the browser. So anything that is for the browser, you put it in the head. Now, the things that you want to show up on your page, you put it in the body. this is the template. So you have a head, you have a body. Every time, all the time, this will be the structure before you actually start to write out the things you want to write. So this will be your structure, the doc type, HTML, your head, then your body. Like I was saying, so the body is the thing that actually shows up on your website. So for example, if I do, please show me. If I do, please show me. Because I've put it in the body, when I go to my website and I refresh, I expect to see it here. Can we all see? Can we all see?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Okay. So the things in the body are the things that actually shows up on your website itself. Every other thing is just for your browser to let you know what you're writing your code in, information for the browser, like what you want your tab to be named. But the things you actually want your user to be able to see, you put them in the body. So now back to the code we were trying to fix, we were trying to build. Can you see the image?
No, I don't see the image.
One sec. I guess I'm able to open it here. Mozilla. Okay. Can we see the image now?
No.
You still can see the image?
Yes, I can see.
Okay, can we all see the
I
image?
can see it now.
Okay, okay. Emmanuel, are you good? Does it make sense now?
Yeah, it does. Yes.
Please, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, so we said the Mozilla is cool. We all agreed that it is the heading. And we all agree that for headings, the most important headings, we would use an H1. So the way we do that is we do an H1. I mean, you do your H1, closing, then you do your opening and you do your closing tag. And we said Mozilla is cool. So that's our heading. Now, if I go back to my browser and I refresh my page, I can see Mozilla is cool. Can we all see? Can we all see?
Yeah, we can see.
Yes.
Hey, please, are we lost? Is anybody lost? Okay. I mean, if you're
I'm a
lost,
bit lost.
okay, please ask your question. And don't feel, if you have questions, ask. Okay, don't feel any pressure, just ask. I'm listening.
Okay, so I know where we put the Mozilla first at the codes, but I'm wondering if we took it because I was looking at the image and then all of a sudden when we came back to the browser, it's Mozilla code. So I don't know if we are going to, I don't know how we'll put the image in the browser.
Oh, so I mean, we haven't gotten to the image yet, so don't worry. We're taking it step by step. So the first thing I wanted, since we had already gone through, we had identified that this is a heading. We're going out to type it out step by step so that we know we are able to implement the things we spoke about. And like I said, if I take out the Mozilla is cool, these from line 1 to 9 is just a template. You would use the same thing all the time. So it's not something that you have to necessarily memorize. It's something that you can even have somewhere and you can always copy and paste. But then the main thing is just to understand that the doc type at the top is telling your browser that your document is in HTML. Your HTML is just going to encapsulate everything that you write. Within your HTML, there are just two things you need to focus about. The head. The head is information for the browser. You don't see that on your page. And the body is everything that you actually want to show up on your page. So just so that you're not confused, the head is different from the header. When we're talking about element, we didn't talk about head, just so that you won't be confused. So all that you see right now, it's not something that you have to memorize. It's something that you would use every time when you're starting a project. So it's just something that you can have somewhere and copy and paste, or just, if you want to memorize, fine. So don't be confused about this thing. Here, most times it's just the title that you change based on what you're working on. So, Mozilla Mozilla code. So yeah, that's all that we had done so far. And the first thing we were going through was, we said the Mozilla is cool is ahead. And so we're trying to implement that. So we said Mozilla is cool will be an H1. So we just saved that. Then we went into the browser, we refreshed it, then we saw Mozilla is cool. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. If you have any questions, just type in
So,
chat or
do we
sorry, you're cutting out. Is she cutting out for anybody else or just me?
put something on the back? I didn't hear you.
Yeah, sorry, Makafui, but I couldn't hear you.
Oh, too bad. So I was asking.
I think you're cutting out. If you can type your question in chat, I mean, I'll read it out and try to answer. Or I mean, if you can fix your network and come back and ask. Yeah, but for the rest of us, guys, please, are we on the same page? Does it make
We
sense?
always have, after putting the code in the browser, we have to refresh all the time.
Yes, for now, our way will be to refresh. Later on, I mean, we'll have ways where we'll make a refresh automatically, but we don't want to worry ahead with too much right now. So whenever we make a change right now, when we do that, we drag it into our browser. Then when we make a change and we want to see it, we just hit refresh. Does it make sense?
Yes, please.
Okay. So are we good to proceed? Okay. I mean, we'll come back and do the image. Since we haven't spoken about image, I don't want it to be confusing, but then I'll come back and show you all. Images are easy to add. Now, the next thing, we said this was a paragraph. At Mozilla, we are a global community of, and how did we say that we do paragraphs? If anybody can quickly shout it out. And how do we do paragraphs? Yes, a P. Okay. So we would use a paragraph tag. Yes. So again, always we do the opening, then we do the closing. So the paragraph tag. So what does it say? We at Mozilla, we're a global community of. So in our paragraph, we type at Mozilla. We are a global community of. Now I'll go to my browser and I'll refresh, but I can't see the change. Why can't I see the change?
We didn't paste.
Come again, we didn't
Copy to paste in the browser.
No, so because we haven't saved, I mean, we don't have to drag and drop it into our browser every time. When we drop it once, that's all. Every time we make a change, all we have to do is save. Now, if I go to the browser and I refresh, we will see that that has come. If you don't save, I mean, you keep, there are several times where I'm pair programming with people and they'll be refreshing and nothing is, and they think the code is not working, but usually it's because you've not saved. So I guess it's one of the habits you have to pick up, that whenever you write something, you save, just so that you don't forget and you start wondering what is happening. So we use a paragraph tag, like we said, we all agreed. Now in our browser, we see that our thing has showed up exactly the way it is. Now, the next thing we see here, we said, what did we all agree that this was? Technologists, thinkers, builders was?
Unordered list.
Unordered list. And how did we say we do unordered list? What's the element we use?
UI.
UL, so unordered
It's
list.
UL, okay.
Yeah, so again, you do your UL, you do your opening, you do your closing, and now you list out your items. So this is the list. I think there are 3 lists. You can just copy and paste 3 times. V. Then the first one was technologists, thinkers, builders. So
okay, that was fine.
just
Things.
thinkers and builders.
Okay.
So I mean, so we have our UL, our unordered list, then we have our list items. So technologists, thinkers, builders. Now, hopefully when we go to our browser and we refresh, we can see what we just did. Okay, there we go, like magic. We see our technologists, our thinkers, our builders. So we used unordered list because they don't have to be in a particular order. Then there was just one more thing. I mean, I don't want to type all of them out, but then, I mean, I'll send this thing. I want everybody to try, but it was working with whatever. So I'll just do a lorem ipsum. So we all agreed. What did we say the working together to keep internet active was?
Paragraph.
Okay. So we'll do, out of the year, we'll do a paragraph. Working together, lorem 10. Sorry, I didn't want to type everything else. I just put like placeholder text. So if we save that and we refresh our browser, we expect to see working together, blah, 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 blah. And the last thing we want to do for this particular one is read the Mozilla, blah, blah, blah. So we agreed that it was a paragraph too. So we said paragraph, read the Mozilla manifesto. I hope I can spell. And we said if we want to link something somewhere, we use an anchor tag. So if we wanted the user to be able to click the manifesto and go to a different thing, what would we wrap it in? What element would we use?
A and then href.
Okay. I hope everybody understands that. So like Emmanuel said, we'll use A again, as always. We do our opening, then we do our closing. So we put our manifesto. Then if we wanted, I mean, I don't know where the link to the manifesto, so let's assume that the manifesto is google.com. Okay, so we'll save that. We go to our, then we refresh. Okay, so read the Mozilla manifesto. Now we see, because we put in an A tag, we see that this link is clickable. Now for our example, we put Google. So we expect that when we click on it, it should take us to Google. Okay, because I don't have internet on this one.
Cornelius,
Yeah.
I was following what you are doing on the VS Code, okay,
Mhm.
but when I drag it to the browser, it doesn't enter.
How are you dragging it? So see how I drag it.
So I drag from
See
from
how
that place where the name is.
Then I open my browser, then I just drop in my browser.
Oh, okay. So for me, my browser doesn't open when it hovers over it.
So I guess because, so if you want, just open the browser, then go to your VS Code and drag it into your browser. And apparently I don't know how to spell code. I said course. Okay, guys, how are we feeling? How are you feeling?
Okay, honestly, it has become a lot.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I quite get it. I understand it. I just need to practice.
Yeah. I mean, it's fine. I mean, it's fine if everything doesn't make sense immediately. That's the whole point. But then as long as you have like a foundation to kick on, I mean, yeah. So essentially, these parts we've spoken about them, that is template you use. The only part we've done right now is we've built a body. And the body, I mean, these things, you are the ones who told me that it's heading, paragraph, URL. So, I mean, it's just those things that we've used. So we've used an H1, a paragraph, a ULB courses on ordered. Now in our thing, when we come here, we see. Now the last thing I want to do is let me try and get the image. Let me see if I can save this image. Let's save a Mozilla image and try and import it into our project, Mozilla logo.
Hey. What did I do wrong?
Emmanuel, is it working?
It's not working. I've dragged it into the browser, and what it's saying is about blank hashtag blocked.
Sorry,
Chrome.
I'll stop. Are you able to share your screen?
I don't know if I can do that.
I mean, I don't.
Yeah. But is it because I'm using Chrome? Is
No,
it
no, no.
chance
So I
because I'm
mean,
using
if I open Chrome, it should work. Like I'm opening Chrome. If I open Chrome and I drag and drop into Chrome, I mean, I can just open a new tab. Okay, I see. This is the message you were getting.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's it. I think it's probably Chrome. Okay. So let
One second.
Let me use Mozilla.
Okay. I mean, I don't know what. Okay.
Let me use Mozilla. Let me just use Mozilla.
Okay. I mean, I can debug this later, but if you have Mozilla, you can use it for now. Yeah. Like I'm saying, there are extensions that you can just use where you can open in your default browser and something like that. But again, it will be too much information for just today. I mean, today I just want us to focus on the basics. So the basics we've learned is we've learned the elements, we've learned the tags, all those things. Now, so I guess does anybody have any questions about these ones, the ones we've gone over? I mean, it's fine if everything is not making sense immediately, but the one thing I wanted us to do was I wanted us to import the image. So let me see if I downloaded it.
It's working.
Okay, so I'll just download, I don't have a logo, so I'll save the image and I'll just show everyone how to import it. Okay, I guess I had already downloaded it. Okay, so now the way you import an image or the way you use an image is conveniently there's an image tag in HTML. So all you have to do same way, IMG. It's just an IMG tag. Now the difference with an IMG is that you don't have to do a closing tag. So it's self-closing. So you don't have to do an opening tag or you don't have to do a self-closing. The only thing you have to do is you have to do an SRC. So an SRC is just a source. So where is the image coming from? So are you getting the image from a website? Because I have the image stored on my computer, I can just, did I save it? I don't think I downloaded. Let me just quickly download. Okay, so if you want to use an image again, you just use an IMG. It's short form for an image. The only difference with an image is that an image is just an opening tag. You don't have to you don't have to close it. So you don't have to do like this. You don't have to do this. This is unnecessary for an image. For an image, you just need this. And the difference, like the way href, you link it to something. For an image, you have to give it a source. So where is the image coming from? And the way you do that is use an SRC. So SRC stands for source. And because I have the image in my thing, I can just find it. Why is the image? Okay, there we go. So, I mean, I have the image in, so this is just saying that go into the same folder, find an image called log and just save. The only difference with an image and other things is that image is self-closing. So that's the only thing you have to remember. Then you have to give it a source where the image is coming from. For this, I'm telling it that I should look in the same folder. I have an image titled logo.png. So if I go in my browser and I refresh, I expect to see it's bigger. I'm coming, let me just, It's too big. Let me just make it small. Don't worry about. So that's how you import an image. You just use the image tag. Again, the only tags and elements that you have to worry about right now, all that we've covered in this class is just headings. We've covered paragraphs, we've covered spans, we've looked at images, ordered list and unordered list. So, I mean, when you look at, if you think you haven't learned anything, let's just test. Okay, are we feeling good about this? I mean, I think this is all what we all agree that this was this and this. I mean, it's a simple web page, but then it's essentially our first web page. So after class, when you have the time during the week, I want everybody to just try out and build this. Again, I'll share my code. Try and build it out by yourself, but just in case you need reference, I'll share my code after class. You can look on it if you need to. But then I'll share like another one so that everybody can just try and code out something. But this is just like a simple thing. So we agreed that
the one you shared in chat, we can't copy and paste, so I think you have to share it somewhere else.
Okay. So I'll just share my code. I'll share my code. I'll export the file and just share. I'll put it on maybe Google Drive or something and just share it. Yeah.
So can we use this as a template to build for the assignments?
I mean, you could, but I guess you're better off, because you're now learning, you're better off trying to type it out rather than just like copying and pasting. But you can just type it out yourself. But you can look on it. Yeah, you can use it as reference to type it out yourself. I'll link some reading materials too, just to link. Now, the thing about coding is that there are a lot of resources. So every time you are looking for how to do something, it's most likely that you can find it on Stack Overflow or MDN. What I recommend is always go to the MDN first. So if you are looking for, I'll put in chat. So for example, if I was looking to import an image and I didn't know how to do it, the way I'll do it is HTML image, then I'll add MDN. Hopefully, when I go to the MDN, they'll show me how to do it. So when I go to the MDN, they're telling me that I should use an image. I mean, the MDN is a good resource for learning things if you don't understand. So, I mean, right now, if you're trying to do something like you're trying to use a tag or elements that you don't know, you can just do like paragraph. I hope I can spell paragraph MDN. It'll show you how to do a paragraph. So just use the MDN as your primary resource. If you need to look up anything, just like go on MDN and find it. It's a good resource. It's the resource I recommend to find stuff. And it's very in-depth. Like they explain everything. So it's not like they'll just tell you to do this. So if you're looking for anything and you can't find it, just go on the MDN and search for, or just Google like paragraph MDN or unordered list MDN. It should be very easy to get. We have like 16 more minutes. Before we just jump into questions, I want to see how we are feeling. So let's quickly look at one of the assignments that we'll be building. One of the assignments that we'll be building. West class. Sheila, are you here with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Do you have any questions?
Not yet.
Okay. So let's look at BBC. I mean, let me know if you can see the image.
Cornelius, there's a question in the chat.
Sorry. Is MDN? No, so MDN is for web development. So for HTML, CSS, JavaScript, everything is on the MDN. So the MDN is by the people who usually update the specs for HTML and CSS. So it's for HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You can find everything on the MDN. It's Mozilla Developers Network, I think. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Yeah. So can you all see the image? I've opened up an image. Can you see? Okay, let me open it. I don't know why you can't see when I share images, but I guess. So I took a screenshot of BBC's website today, and I want us to try and use our knowledge to see if we can identify what they are using and stuff like that. How we feeling?
Okay.
So,
okay.
So, I wish I could open it. I'm shocked you guys can see it because I wanted to.
I can see it.
Okay, but no, I wanted to show. Okay, so what would we say there? Makafu, please come again.
I can see it.
Okay. So this is a screenshot of BBC's website today. Let's try and identify if you can tell what tags they are using, what it is, and stuff like that. Because that's the first part. I mean, when you can identify, you can build it out, and then it's not complicated. It's these same things that they are doing. I mean, when we learn CSS, we'll be able to position it like they are doing. But what do we think they are using for the top parts, where it says "Welcome to BBC"? All those stuff. What element do we think that is? I don't know if you guys can see me moving.
Title. They are looking at for the elements. Okay.
Yeah. So again, just to clarify, so the title usually goes in the head, and we said the things in the head are things that don't show up on your page itself, because this is for the browser. So you see here, I have Mozilla Code. Where does Mozilla Code show up? It shows up in my tab name, so it's not for my page. So just to yeah. So what will we say this thing is? And I can't see chat, so I mean, okay. Sorry, I'm out of town, so I don't have.
It's the header.
It's the header. Okay, so it's the header, and within the header, we would say, Emmanuel, repeat your answer. Within the header, what would you say "Welcome to BBC" is?
Each one.
Do we all agree? Is it the most important thing on the page?
Yes.
Okay, so we say this top part is the header, and we're saying that this one is an H1. So again, we can identify it. What would we call all this part? So the part with Kamala Harris, this one. What would we call all this part?
Will be hyperlinks.
No, like what would we call that like the whole part?
Body.
Okay, so body is the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so for example, in this Mozilla thing, like everything you can see is the body. So everything is the body. So we've established that everything is the body. Everything we can see is the body. So we're trying to break it down further. So from this, I don't know, when I drag my mouse, can you guys see me moving around?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what would we call all this part? All of them together?
The list.
Come again?
All of them together.
The list.
Did you say a list?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure I can hear her. Can anybody hear her well?
Yeah, she's lagging.
Yeah. So, I mean, if anybody is putting anything in chat, unfortunately, I have only one screen today because I'm not at home, so I can't see. But yeah, okay, nobody else. So, I mean, if you ask me, I would say maybe this is like the main. Somebody could also say it's a section. Now, the thing is that if I give this website to two developers to code, they will probably not do the same thing. Someone might use a section for all this part. Someone might use a main. So there's no right or wrong answer for these things. So if you ask me, if I was building this, I'll probably use a main for all this. Then I'll be like, this is one section. Kamala Harris's part is one section. This is another section. This is another section. This is another section. So I mean, let's take it as this is the section. Within the section, what will we say this one is? Russia has committed crimes against humanity. What element will we use for Russia? Oh, Makafu, you are breaking out.
I think that will be the hyperlink.
Okay, I see we are all excited about hyperlinks. So the only thing about links is, think of links as something that you're clicking to take you somewhere. And I mean, I would assume that on BBC, when you click on the image, it'll take you somewhere, but we're trying to like look at the individual elements. So like Russia has, I don't know if on the website you can click on Russia has committed crimes. But then, for example, the way I want us to think about it is, I would think that is a heading. So they are probably using like one of the H elements. Because we said welcome to BBC's H1, this is probably like maybe A2 or A3. H3, I don't know how important it is. Kamala Harris was speaking at a security, I think that is a paragraph. So they'll be using a paragraph tag for that. I mean, of course, the picture is an image. Then Europe, I mean, who can guess what elements they are using for Europe? We spoke about things that are small text. We use
Span.
yes. So we'll be using a span for this. So that's the way I want us to think about it. So we are saying that we all agree that this is a header. We all agree that this could be a main, it could be a section. And the thing is,
What's the difference, please? Can you rehash the difference between the main and the section?
so the main is like the name goes, is the main part of your website or your web application. So it's the part that contains like the main information or the key things you want people to see.
Okay.
Yeah, and section is almost the same, but the thing about section is section doesn't have to be the main part. It could be other parts.
Okay.
And the thing
Okay.
I think about sections is you can have sections within sections. So for example, if somebody used the section for all this part, they could also say that this Kamala Harris one is a section, the Canadian one is a section, this is a section, because they are separate things, so they make sense on their own. So the Russia is a separate section, Canadian Houses is a separate section, Denmark's limited edition is a separate section, Liverpool winning, yeah, it's a separate section. So this whole thing could be a section, it could be a main. Then within those, we have individual sections too. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Yeah.
So it
Then
means that
within the
main can
sections,
just be-
please go on.
the main can just be one part, right? If you are doing using the main tag, it
Yes.
can just be one part, but then the section can both be the main part you are working on and divisions within that same section. I don't know if I'm being clear.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to understand it for now. Yeah.
Okay.
So let's look at this. We have like 7 more minutes to run out. Within this Canada section, what would we say this one is? How Canadian houses are being stolen from owners? What elements would we use for that?
Paragraph.
I mean, you could use a paragraph. I mean, I see it more as a heading.
Okay.
I see it more as a heading because then it's like the main thing. So I mean, I see this one as a heading. What would we use for the Canada?
Okay. Is the span, right?
Yes.
But why isn't the Canada a footer instead?
So footer is, let me show you a footer. Do I have anything? So you would call this thing a footer, like
okay,
the thing at the bottom. Usually the ones you have at the bottom, those ones are the footer.
Right.
Yeah. So those ones are the footer. So footer is usually the things at the bottom of your page, at the base of your page. That's when you use a footer.
Okay.
And I mean, I can show you guys a trick. So when you go into any website, for example, somebody give me a website. Okay, let's go to BBC. I mean, so when you go to any website, whether you are on Chrome or browser, when you right click, you see this thing, it's called inspect. When you click on inspect, let me move this thing. Sorry. When you click on inspect, sorry, I can't see. How do I move this? When you click on inspect, usually you can see the code. I mean, you can't see everything, but you can see if I'm able to drag this thing down. You can see the things they are using. So for example, you see the head. Can you guys see they've declared a doc type? Yeah, then there's the HTML. I mean, you don't have to, there's so much in there, it might be confusing, but just look at the main thing. So there's the doc type. You always have to declare the doc type for your site. There's the HTML. Everything falls within the HTML. They have the head. So the head is, so if you can see, it says BBC homepage. I can change it to like, belongs to me now. Now, can you see that the title has changed to belongs to me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the title. The title is the things you don't see in the body. I mean, there's more that you don't have to worry about. Then there's the body. If you skip past all these things, you eventually get to the body. And now this is the body. Now for the body, you can see all the things. I mean, like I was saying, very old code, they use divs for everything because we used to use divs before we had like sections and stuff like that. I guess BBC, they don't have time to update their website. So everything is div. Yeah, you see they have a section, they have a div, they have sections. So I mean, if you usually want to see codes, what code a site is using, when you click on inspect, I mean, maybe now it might be a lot because there might be so much that you don't understand, but you can see some things that you understand. You see the doc type, you see HTML, you see the body and things like that. So it's the same things that the sites are using. So right now you can essentially build this website. Maybe you don't know how to do everything, but at least you have the basics to be able to build the website. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to challenge all of us to try and build out this website. We don't have to style it. We don't have to make it look anyway. All we have to do is, so I mean, I don't expect it to be positioned next to each other. I want to like the way our Mozilla thing is straight like this. But then I want to challenge all of us. Just I'll share this. We can look on it. We can do it. So if this is the header, do the header. If you think this is a section, do a section. Just do that. Don't try to position it in any way. Just like code raw HTML. Do the section, do the paragraphs, do the tags, do the headings. How you want to express it. And like I'm saying, the way I might code this website is different from the way another developer will code the website because I might be using different elements. One I might think is a section, they might think it's a div, or they might think it's a main. So there's no right or wrong way. Just code it out. Just write out the code, and you know enough right now to be able to build this. And you have till next week. You have till next week Saturday to be able to code. If you have any questions, hopefully we'll have the community app by then. You can ask questions. You can send an email. Yes, any questions?
Okay. So we'd have to code it with the images and everything.
Yeah, but I mean, if you can't find a particular image, just find any image. You can use any image. I mean, you don't have to put the text on top of the image. I mean, the way we know how to do things right now is to add an image. So most likely the image will be underneath the text, which is fine. That's exactly how I want it. So just code a raw HTML because we don't know any CSS. I mean, you might know CSS from somewhere, but here we don't know CSS. So let's just write out raw HTML. Next time when we come, we'll go over more HTML. Then we'll start to add some styling to it so that our sites can look close to this. It can look a lot more nicer. But now we know enough to be able to build out the content. And like we were saying, okay, I want us to build out the HTML. I'll share the Khan Academy one too. Just build it out raw. I mean, if you see something that we didn't talk about, of course, go to the MDN. For example, if you see a button and you don't know how to do button, go to MDN and be like, button, HTML, MDN. I will show you how to do it. That's the way you learn. I mean, we have only 10 weeks. We won't be able to cover every single thing, but we'll cover most of them. Every important thing we'll cover in class. But I mean, you also need to put in the work. I mean, when I said, can you dedicate like 8 or 10 hours? I mean, we'll spend like less than half of that together. I'm hoping that the remainder is one that you can put in work yourself and be able to read stuff and learn stuff on your own. If you have any questions, I mean, you can always send an email. Hopefully we'll have the community app. You can drop it in there. People will answer you. Yes, so that's all that we have for today. I'll stop sharing my screen. Is there any questions before we run away? So just to recap today we spoke about learning how to learn. We spoke about active recall, spaced repetition. We spoke about, and maybe before we leave, I will mention that I'll share my Anki, how my Anki looks like. So I'm opening up my Anki. See, I'm sharing everything with you guys because I really want you guys to be successful with this. Right? So I expect you guys to, I mean, we are not taking any money. We are not taking everything. The only thing I require from you is just to like put in the effort, just to put in the work. And I'm sure if you put in the work, you're going to be successful. So Can you guys see my Anki? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So for example, okay. So for example, when I was, these are some of the old ones. So for example, when I'm learning like advanced CSS stuff, when I'm learning like APIs, what I do is like I add a deck. Then when I learn something, I like put it inside. So when I come, like it'll bring it up, then I review and stuff like that. So that's what will help. Just create decks. So for example, you learned HTML. I was making decks for HTML basics, but then I figured it's better to like make them on your own. So for example, this is something that I write. So what does this tag do? Then so that's how I would do it. Like if I learn something, so what does the paragraph tag do? What is a section? That's how I'll do my cards. Then I'll be reviewing them just so that I'm like taking out the forgetting curve and stuff like that. That's the only way you can be successful, if you are being consistent, managing your frustrations. And you're using Anki. So I reckon everybody that's Anki. Small things, put them inside. I mean, I have a lot of decks because I put like when I'm learning small things, even very small things, like I was prepping for an interview, like I put everything in Anki just so that like I can space out, know that I can learn it and stuff like that. So that's what I recommend for everybody. Use Anki. Yeah, use Anki. Yeah, so that's it. So today, just to recap.
So it's an app.
Yeah,
You
yes.
have like a link.
I have a link. I'll share it in the email after class. Yeah. Yeah.
And the slides. Would you share that one as well, please?
I'll share. Okay, I'll share that one after class. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I'll share everything after class. Yeah. So yeah, today we've gone over the internet. We've gone over web development. We've done HTML basics. I mean, everything will make sense immediately. But then the only thing is I guess that sometimes when things don't make sense or you're frustrated, it's just a sign that you're learning something that you didn't know. So I mean, if you don't know it right now, it's just because you haven't learned it. So I believe that everybody's capable of learning. So I wish everybody all the best. If you have any issues, I mean, sometimes my schedule is like really tight, so I might not see the emails early, but send me like an email, or I'm sure most of you have my phone number or at least Instagram. You can send me a message on there. I'll try and get back to you. I'll try and create a page. Wait, also, quick one. Are we all fine? Are we all comfortable with the WhatsApp page?
Yes.
Okay.
But can we get a Slack to?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking of Slack, but I thought it would be a lot for all of us. I mean, how many of us can I quickly do it for? What do we prefer between Slack and WhatsApp? What would we prefer?
Bro, I'm just hearing about Slack. What's Slack?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that was one of the things I was thinking about, because I assumed everybody that go drop off. Okay. Yeah, I know, like most of the people who signed up, not everybody is here. Like most people are in different time zones and stuff like that's why I had to record, because some people may say that they are getting off their shifts. So if we can record so that they can catch up. But I guess I can stop recording now.